with using hallmark lentils, which are the IMI-tolerant, well, an IMI-tolerant line. So they've crossed Group C with the Group B 2 applications. So there's been some pre-emergent with Group C, followed by a post-M of Group B through it as well. So whether I might just get Larn just to run through some of the importance of the herbicide use patterns and tolerance and that sort of stuff. That's all right, Larn?
Yep. No, I can sing out if you've got any queries. But I think the concept behind this trial was about trying to find the right herbicide package for a low rainfall environment. So it's pretty well understood down like in Daniel's area how people control their weeds and use their Group Cs to get the best out of them without causing herbicide damage to the crop. But in the lower rainfall areas, there's less information, and perhaps also on these heavier soils in the lower rainfall areas. So for the idea was to have a look at the Group C and then apply the Group B afterwards. And it's a very difficult thing because, just to take a step back, the Group C, you're probably aware, but the Group C technology is based on avoidance in lentils. Lentils are extremely sensitive to Group C herbicides. They're definitely more sensitive than faba beans, and probably more sensitive than field peas on most soil types. So we basically put the seed down deep, and that's why that recommendation for sowing pulses is 5 centimetres. And then we put the herbicide either IBS or PSPE on top, and then we basically say hopefully those two never meet, because there isn't a great deal of tolerance in the lentils. There's very minor levels of tolerance. And the theory is that you get a nice moist band between the seed and the herbicide, and those two don't ever catch up to each other. In reality, often, particularly in low rainfall areas, you're sowing into dry or moist soils at best, into marginally moist soils at best, and often that first rainfall will then push the herbicide down to the wetting front, which is where the roots are of the emerging seedling, and that's where you get uptake and damage. And it all depends on the Group C you use. So some Group Cs, Group Cs vary in their solubility and the leaching index. So they vary how easily they dissolve in water, and they vary how quickly they move through soils. And the lighter the soil is, the more important the leaching index value is, because obviously they'll leach through a sandy soil quicker than a clay soil. So you've got all these variabilities to deal with, and it makes it really, well, I equate it to a game of Russian roulette really, because it's so hard to get that choice right. And what growers and consultants have generally done over time is use a combination of the Group Cs, and so they might use, say, simazine and diuron, or turbine and diuron or something. And what they're doing there is mixing up the leaching and solubility values, because the different chemicals have different leaching and solubility values. So they're not putting all the risks in one basket, both for damage to the crop and also for trying to get weed control, trying to leave the herbicide where the weeds are emerging. And the other thing they've done is use either solely IBS, so you're kicking the herbicide out of the row, or a combination of IBS and PSPE, again to sort of vary the risk with the herbicide moving and where the herbicide is placed. So everyone always asks, what's the best Group C combination to use? And it's really difficult. And generally most people use a combination, as I say, of simazine and diuron, and they tailor that rate for the soil type. Obviously the sandier the soil, the lighter that rate goes. You might substitute the simazine with turbine now as well for lentils. So that's sort of what's happened, and a lot of that goes out IBS and maybe with a little bit PSPE. But some people might use a little bit of metribuzin in there as well to mix things up a bit. It depends on the weed spectrum and I guess your confidence with the different chemicals on your soil types. So that's where it's gone with. I don't know, Matt and Dusty, what do you suggest for lentils on these soil types with a Group C brew?
Yeah, it's sort of simazine diuron or straight simazine is what I've been going with. IBS, PSPE has had me worried.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously not huge area of lentils grown in the district, but steer clear of metribuzin. We've had some issues with lentils and field peas with them, so with metribuzin, so been a bit nervous with that on our soil types. But yeah, simazine diuron, depending on the moisture bed, like as to what rates would go with, sort of thing. So
I reckon he's hit the nail on the head. That's why it's impossible when people say, oh, what do you use? Because you take all those considerations into your soil type, your stubble loading, how even you got your seed placement, how moist your soil is, what the rainfall prediction is. The other part of this trial was the intervix or the intercept over the top. And I guess the comment I just wanted to make about that is that it's not, the lentils aren't fully tolerant to the intervix and intercept, so there is a rate range there, and so be aware of that. And generally, I think the label rate is up for 750 mil, but that will definitely cause a biomass reduction and a delay in flowering on a lot of soil types, particularly the sandier, low fertility soil types. So be aware in lentils that intervix intercept rate over the top, you do have to modify for your soil type.
Have your boom spray penciled in that it doesn't overlap too much, because it'll shows bad.
Yeah, probably just to clarify that, probably if there's going to be like foliar damage, that's probably maybe harsher earlier on, but the delay to flowering and biomass reduction, or particularly flowering, will be greater the closer you are to flowering. The gene for the IMI tolerance is the same, but you get these variations on the actual expression of the tolerance. And in the fava bean, it's a different one, a different event to what it is in the lentils. And in the fava bean, you've actually got a greater level of tolerance to the IMIs than you have in the lentils.
What about the field pea?
The field pea, we've got two different events. So yeah, so we've got the same event as the lentils in the Alstar, which is why we get the SU tolerance and the IMI tolerance. And then the other one, we've got a different event to both the fava bean and the lentil, and that is only giving IMI tolerance. You also get a background effect of the crops. So fava beans and field peas have a background effect of greater tolerance to IMIs anyhow, so you've got that in there as well. So it gets a bit complicated, but I guess the take-home message is with the IMI over the top in lentils is be aware of the rate by soil type interaction.